Hey guys, still there. Today I'm featuring a game that I was in, but I'm not going to be featuring my own gameplay, simply because it really wasn't very good. I was in a team with Spec 96, Paramedic and D-Dog, and we were going up against Käsekuchen, Conqueror, Grimmy and Zarek. Now these guys clearly knew what they were doing. They were very heavily versed in Conquest, so that was definitely an advantage for them. And something that we really hadn't prepared for, let's say it that way. So, my Chinese mechanized deck is going to have a very hard time holding or punching through Hotel here, even when backed up by Spec 96. D-Dog is going to be taking this flank in Echo, and Paramedic is going to be pushing over into Alpha and Delta. In the meanwhile, these guys really know what they're doing, and we got utterly devastated in this game. And this game is very much about, okay, what went wrong and how can I improve that? What exactly did these guys do that made them so successful? That's going to be the focus of this video. So what I'm going to be looking at is what kind of tactics they have been using, what kind of units they sent forward, and what we can learn from this tactic and how we can possibly recreate it. Now already I'm seeing quite some interesting units being deployed. Stormer HVM, that's a pretty expensive, let's say, all-rounder. A couple of Vickers Mark 11, fast tank-like units, except that they don't have a lot of armor. LAV Scout, and a couple of units with recoilless rifles. So let's push this up a little bit. We have, by the looks of it, one Eurocore deck, LAV 25 Scout, Aslavs, I think that's a US deck. There was one, I believe, Scandinavian mechanized deck, and that's about it. Okay, so we're off. We got a Celtic, a Tiger, and one helicopter landing troops here. Probably Fallschirmjägers. The Tiger managed to get a sudden death here on our helicopters. So that's a couple of very expensive units down, but it's not important at this stage. We just don't need the kills. Over here, the Aslavs and the Vickers are pushing up aggressively. Now, what he's doing here is very clever. Because normally, what you see someone do, and it's exactly what I did, I tried to rush vehicles right down over into this building. If you deploy a couple of Vickers as well as an Aslav, you're going to make sure that the enemy cannot reach that building. And a normal tank just would not be fast enough to get here. An Aslav 25 or an a Vickers Mark 11 like these are wheeled, which means they're going to be a lot faster off-road and they're going to be a lot faster on-road. So getting these things into position here really slowed me down. And you can see a couple of my vehicles have been destroyed already, a couple of my tanks are rushing into position. But an Eric's team like this is going to have a very easy time just picking off my transports one by one. They don't really have a lot of units over here yet. You can see they lack recon, because most of my units aren't even identified. I offloaded my command infantry here, but of course with a KPZ Kyler from Conqueror shooting at them, there was not really a lot I could do. Pioneers in the building, I'm trying to get my infantry into this position as quickly as possible. But in the meanwhile, I was getting shot at from multiple angles. We got a Mortar 2 here that's taking shots at me. I got TH-495s with an autocannon. I'm being bombed. Meanwhile, these guys don't have that much yet, but I'm following Zarek here mostly. They're just pushing Pioneers into position, as well as some ATGM units. Which, I gotta say, really worked very well, because I was just completely incapable of pushing in here. Now over on the left, something interesting was going on. Para was completely able to push right over this bridge, and he barely ran into any kind of resistance. There was just nothing there. So he just kept going, and you can see that he even closes on the command squad pretty quickly. I don't believe we found it yet. There's a T-72B1 just coming across the bridge without really any kind of threat to it, except for the Tiger, of course. The one thing that we didn't really have here was a on this flank, and that is going to be pretty lethal in the sense that we are not going to be able to get away with it. Para dropped us some Gornish Strelkies, which are immediately getting napalmed here, so he has to pull them out of the building, which makes them a lot more vulnerable. You can see that now Blue 4 is starting to respond to this incursion. Deploying the Tiger, deploying the KPZ Kyler, sending one VAB into position, which is empty. A couple more VABs with HEGMs are coming in. But if Para had just kept going here, he would have been probably quite capable of going all the way over to the other flank, possibly neutralizing India in the process. Now in the meanwhile, over here in the middle and over to the right, we had most of this zone under our control in Echo. Of course there's the river, which is very hard to cross. And they just kept this position with a couple of small, a bunch of rangers, and not even any AA units. What they did have though, and that's not something I can show you really, is a lot of air superiority fighters. Which means that the moment we start bombing, they start sending out a massive air response. You'll be seeing that later. You can see they're constantly flying in sorties. We got a Harrier GR7, we got a Nighthawk coming in. The Nighthawk just keeps nuking strategic targets such as a recon unit. Because nice as they are, these units cannot fire without good optics. So I'm going to switch this back to Para. You can see that he doesn't really see a lot. That's without the lack of recon. So taking out the recon was a very, very clever idea. Now Zarek over here in the middle, he keeps bringing in reinforcements. We got one Milan 2 team here, which keeps taking out my transports as they kind of come in. A couple of pioneers, a Pinsgauer with some infantry, and one cargo to either keep the Milans firing or to reinforce these squads. But of course, one cargo is not going to really reinforce that too much. Over on the right, they haven't really brought in any new units, but they do have a sort of, let's say, picket line. You can see they have one LAV scout against incursions by helicopters going around the flanks. So that's not really an option. And over here they're constantly bringing in more and more units in order to defend against that push from Para. Para unfortunately didn't really have good AA, and you can see that his OSAs are not successful in taking down the MLU. Whereas I believe most of his tanks at this stage are destroyed, and he just has the OSAs left. So Blue 4 successfully managed to neutralize this incursion and can now pretty much at their leisure push back with these, I believe the Vickers again. Yep, Vickers and an Aslav just to push out these OSAs, get them out of this sector. At which stage this incursion completely failed and we have absolutely nothing to respond with. All the while that's been going on, we have been hemorrhaging points. We're losing +2 to Blue 4. If they keep this up, then this game is going to be over very quickly. Now it was very difficult for us to get a real advantage here, or at least I didn't really know how to pull it off. So I'm trying to push out with more ZSD 90s with infantry inside, and just a couple of Zanchis against Pioneers with Napalm is not really a good match. But it's all I had. And you can see that Zarek does not have a lot of forces, but the forces that he does have are very effective. They have their Stormer HVM here. Stormer, of course, being very good at all-rounding, very good against helicopters, pretty good against taking out vehicles at 26-25 meter range, and it can even shoot down the occasional aircraft, although I rarely see them do that. Now, this is one of their air responses. I sent in a bomber to go after these Jaeger here, and you can see that I got almost all of them. And that's when this thing shows up. One Eurofighter Typhoon. Of course the game won't let me exactly look at it. But they had plenty more where that came from. And being a Conquest game, you don't have to worry about the cost of units, because you have very high income anyway. And you don't really have to worry about losing too many expensive units, so you can just pull in whatever you like, so long as you keep that advantage for the zones that you have captured going. I'm trying to do a bit of an incursion here with the ZSD 90, of course pushing right into Panzer Grenadiers, and I'm not sure if I got killed off by the Buratino, or the Panzer Grenadiers took care of me, but I think it might have been the Buratino. Spec 96 is pushing up with VDV against a couple of Jaegers. So far they are winning, but we don't have the forces right now to start clearing out this forest. And at the same time, this position for Blue 4, or whatever team starts over here, is always very effective. You have an HGM team, one recon unit, and let's say a medium heavy tank. And And they just keep pushing us away. They just keep us at bay. You can see that my vehicles, sorry, Spec's vehicles are just not capable of successfully pulling in here. Spec goes for the bombing run. Now, that bombing run was successful. It took out the Milan. But look at what they're sending after it. An MLU, they are coming in with a Nighthawk, and I believe they were spawning another fighter as well. Fortunately, I believe our aircraft made it out alive. Okay, this was not really the response I was thinking about, because later on in the game you're going to see a much larger airstrike. Bombing coming in, Jaegers are pulling out exactly when they need to. They do take some of the blast, but the VDV are now dead. Over on the left, again, there's not too much of a presence, just one Aslav and a Vickers, as well as a Bushranger and a VEP 2013 with an autocannon. Nothing in the sense of AA. So had we pushed in here with a bunch of helicopters, we would have pretty easily pushed all the way through, possibly even neutralizing Delta. So, if I'm not mistaken, what Blue 4 is doing here is pushing with, I believe, 3 players onto this zone. Let's see, this is Conqueror, another tank by Conqueror. I got Käsekuchen over here. This is Zarek. Where's the other guy? Where's Grimmy? Grimmy's over to the right. So they were focusing pretty much all of their forces on Delta, sorry, on Echo and Hotel here. This is all they were going for. And it's a good strategy, because most people, and pretty much exactly the same as we did, we went straight for the towns, where you either get a massive standoff, or where you're going to see one town get pushed out of the way, and usually Red 4 manages to capture this position, where Blue 4 is trying to push back from this bridge and this town over here. At this stage we just could not do that much, and I'm constantly bringing in reinforcements. Spect is losing a lot of infantry here, lots of VDV are going down, and the vehicles that they're using aren't even that expensive. A Leopard 2 C2 Mexis 75-point tank, very good accuracy, so these things are very good at picking off transports as they're coming in, because I rarely, if ever, use a tank here. Although that's exactly what I needed to do here. They're also moving in with an automatic. A couple more infantryans over on the right flank. A couple of AA units coming in. You can see this is clever. They're sending in their transports over the water. Always be wary of that, but I would personally go for a landing like this only if I had smoke, because at this stage it's very dangerous to just keep pushing across, whereas you saw one of these commandos already got destroyed as they were on the water in their transport. Over on the right we have D-Dog with LSTRs, Commander Concourse, T-72B1 from Spectre coming in, heavily damaged. And the amount of firepower that they have here is mostly short-range anti-tank. The longest-range anti-tank weapon that they have currently on this flank is the Stormer, with the automatic and good fire support. And over here they just don't have any long-range defenses. All they're putting up is a sort of, let's say, semi-defense, which is not too powerful. So they don't seem to expect any kind of push over this bridge. They know that all the action is geared around this section of the battlefield. Now constant airstrikes coming in. Again a Nighthawk comes in and goes for the bombing run. There was little to nothing that we could do about this, unfortunately. We didn't have the recon to spot these guys in time. You can see they just nuked another group of infantry. Pioneers immediately take advantage of the clearing of the position, pushing in with napalm, pushing in with their submachine guns. Spetsnaz grew not exactly geared to deal with that. They're getting stunned and they're going to get wiped out pretty quick. Over here, Para managed to get a group of Spetsnaz GRU across, and these guys are going to wreak some havoc in the forest here, but we're still not exactly getting any benefits from it. I mean, in destruction this would be a perfect defensive, but in Conquest, even if you clear out this fort, it doesn't really help you. Not unless you can get a CV in here, and that for my team was very difficult because there was really no position we could safely park a command vehicle. And we are still losing 1 point every few seconds. Now, in the meanwhile, I had resorted to firing a whole bunch of mortars. So I have 8 mortars that I'm getting ready to fire with. And I just keep shelling whatever I can find. Currently, my target's the automatic here, as well as some of these resupply units. You can see that they are taking damage, but I'm lacking the salvo to actually kill them. Smirtron comes in, destroys some mortars from Zarek. And I just keep moving these batteries around, keep firing, keep moving, to make sure that they're not going to get countered, at least not that easily. Paramedic Spets crew are panicked, but they're still alive, and they just can't keep clearing this forest. There's just not much that Blue 4 can do against that at the moment. What Blue 4 can do is intercept another BTR-80A, which was packed with Morskaya Pekota. So these guys are not actually going to make it across, or at least this one wasn't. But these guys probably are. You see, the Spetsnaz are pushing towards the right position. We got Zarek putting down an attack marker, because I believe the Spats crew are now detected. Probably by the looks here. Bomber goes in, heavily damages the Spats crew. Not a lot they can do about that. And now we're going to be facing off against one tank, which also happens to have an autocannon. Mortar fire going in. They really don't want the Spats crew on this flank. Para, Undaunted, just keeps pushing forward, fires into the Kyler. Kyler takes a lot of damage, but the Morskayas are going to have to finish the job because the Spetsnaz are now gone. Now, we were starting to lose momentum, but so were they. Blue 4 did not have that much mobility or that much units pushing towards this sector. They just kept us at bay with airstrikes and artillery, which may sound like a cheesy tactic, but it was actually very effective, because it was all they had to do. They were in a comfortable position where they were getting +1 every few seconds, every 4 seconds that is. They were more than halfway towards their 500-point victory, and we were sitting there with just 2 points and no positive counter, so we were just losing points all over the place. The thing that could have neutralized that was either capturing Echo, which means we had to push out the command vehicle, which is all the way over here, or putting a CV of our own in this zone, which again was not really that doable, because we couldn't park it there, we couldn't park it there, it would get spotted and killed off. We could not put in a command infantry over here because it is too risky and it's more likely to get airstrike than anything else. You can see I'm immediately putting down some more infantry, trying to capture these buildings as soon as my vehicles get there, which of course should have gotten there a long time ago. Mortars, both of them getting ready to fire, and I fire hundreds of rounds between these 8 mortars. They carry 204 rounds per group, and I go through all of that pretty much twice over. Trying to finish up on this position. I was trying to get the Stormer killed. The Storm managed to slip away here again. It's not the first time I was firing at this thing. Paramedic over here is doing great work. He just keeps pushing through this forest, and at this point we pretty much have the forest under our control. There's nothing in here anymore. That's until the Pioneer starts showing up. We don't really have a response to that. Big aircraft come in. A big 25 BM seaplane from from my team, which is going to get a response, I believe. Or they're just going to take this down the traditional way. Look at that. 2 Block 52s are coming in. Very good air superiority fighters. And right when the seed aircraft managed to get away, a MiG-25 popped in, almost got hit by one of the blocks. And again, the block managed to not hit this thing, and it managed to pull away. D-Dog, in the meanwhile, is trying to push up through this position, trying to clear the Jaeger out of this town, so we can finally start moving towards this position. I'm trying to engage these guys with a couple of tanks. You can see that a stormer here is engaging probably a helicopter of mine. At the same time, Spect is pushing in with a lot of infantry, as well as some T-62Ms from Paramedic. He was doing a very good job here trying to support Spect. And Spect just could not really get a foothold, not without losing a lot of forces. We finally put a few units into the building, and you can see Blue Force response coming in, which is just putting vehicles on the other side of the water, which is perfectly enough. They don't have to get close in and kill us with infantry. They're still getting a +1. Having this block of buildings though does help us. It means that we can slightly more safely push in here with a command vehicle. And at this point we had a bit of an offensive going. Of course I kept losing units to this Kyler here, which was firing at us with the main gun and the autocannon. At the same time, a couple of Mortar 2s providing very, very accurate fire support for Blue 4. And out of the 10 VDV-90, only one of the group made it to these buildings. I got a few Zanchi to back them up, but my Zanchi are not really that suitable to dealing with a heavily armored tank. The VDV-90 are, but again, they're just a one-man squad at this stage. Leopard 1A5 pushes across here, getting ready to fire from this position. And again, it's all they need to do. They just need to keep us at range. So if they can just do that with the units that they have, they're just going to win by default. At this point in time, I had a lot of points. I had probably 600 points ready to spend, but I just did not know what I should spend them on in order to turn this game around. I just had no clue what to do with it. Spec 96 pushes ACV right into the middle, and finally we're no longer losing points. So we just kept losing points right up until the marker hit 345 out of 500 for them. They just kept pushing us back. Or actually, they just held us at bay. They weren't even pushing us back. Pushing across with some strange combination of units. I think that the EOTS Hawk and the Roland were ordered in a little while ago. At which stage they are now redundant, and they really shouldn't be here. A couple of Martyrs are pushing up, and come to think of it, maybe what they're trying to do here, and it's quite effective. As you can see, my two Q5Ds get shot down in rapid succession here. Here's the first one, there's the second. They're trying to put a smoke screen down, getting the Martyrs ready to fire, or getting the Martyrs ready to move across with the infantry inside. Infantry is going to get dropped off, and the most likely response that they were going to get from us, which exactly I responded to with what they were expecting, is an airstrike. So my airstrike got very quickly dealt with by a Roland 3, an EOTS Hawk, and I believe that there is quite a bit of air power in the air. A couple of F-16 Block 52s, or where have these seen these before? And again, my bombs, I don't believe they do any kind of damage. They just manage to stun them a little bit. They don't even panic them. Spect, as well as D-Dog, are pushing in here with Specialny Jetnotkis and Spetscrew. But against this amount of firepower, this type of infantry just does not stand a chance. They're doing what they can. I'm going to back them up with my mortars. One mortar died, unfortunately. Or sorry, 3 mortars died, because I wasn't moving them around enough. You can see Spect rearming the Buratino, coming back out to help out in this sector. And he did a bit of a friendly fire bombing run on D-Dog's forces here, as he was trying to neutralize the infantry that was still in here, as well as the Kyler, of course. Kylers are, in a one-on-one tank fight, not that impressive. But in a situation like this, they are worth their weight in gold. They are just that effective at dealing with enemy units. Now at this stage they started bringing in the big guns. Look at this, Leopard 2A5 as well as a Leopard 2A4 right next to it. Infantry, again, Jaegers pushing up under their fire support. And with a lot of air defense that they had in this sector, there's just one EOTS Hawk, but that's don't let that mistake you for having not a lot of air support. Because what they did have was a lot of air fighters that could very easily take down the units that we were sending towards dealing with these tanks. My ZSD-90s, the BTRs, Zanshis are utterly incapable of dealing with these guys. Buratino is firing again, doing quite a bit of stun damage, but nothing really in the sense of actual damage to these vehicles. You can see the Kyler is finally almost going down. Morskaya Pekota pushing in, Specialny Jednotki pushing in, and Blue 4 is currently sitting at 70% of points, because again they managed to neutralize RCV. You can still see it burning up here. So again, they have this zone under their control, they have the +1, and they just keep gaining points this way. In the meanwhile, in this forest we did not really have a good presence. Paramedic did absolutely everything he could, but against a shorter supply route as well as an easier way in for Blue 4, there was not that much that he could have done differently, or at least not that I can see, that would have made him get the upper hand in this forest. You can see they're pushing in with Panzer Grenadiers, Pioneers, Mortar 2s, VAPs with autocannons, Aslavs, Aslav 25 TOW 2s, Chieftain Mark 11. I'm trying to help out there with my helicopters at long range. I do get some snipes on tanks that are slightly unfortunate to be able to get seen here. See, there's a Eurofighter just coming in, getting shot down instantly by, I believe, the Bucks from Paramedic. Helicopters are now empty, so it's time to get these things back to base. And again, my mortars are providing fire support as best they can. Now engaging, I believe, these units of AA that we were they're engaging the mortars here to make sure that we can no longer be at least smoked or stopped by these mortars. Specialny Jednotki by D-Dog managed to kill off the 2A5 and the 2A4. Of course, it did take us quite a lot of troops in order to get there, but right now we have, let's say, the island under our control. This side of the river is now ours. But Blue 4 doesn't care. They don't really have to do anything. At this point though, we are gaining 1 point every 4 seconds, which is very, very slow. Considering we had 15 minutes left on the clock, we had to do something else in order to push across, in order to get the advantage somewhere. And I believe that Spect is pushing over with, or getting ready to push over with a couple of helicopters. Ka-52, a couple of Mi-24Vs. It's going to push around, but of course there is one Lux. Now you may be thinking, what the hell is this thing doing out here? Well, it's an amphibious unit, 43 kph off-road, and 48 kph in the water. And just having this thing here is enough to deter a helicopter push. Interestingly, I'm not sure how or why it happened, but the Blue 4 command unit over here managed to go down. Not sure what happened there. I'm thinking it might have been some artillery strike. This might be the command vehicle right here. I can't really see. Yeah, that looks like a Fuchs. That's a command vehicle. Not really sure how they managed to get it, but perfect all the same. Because now we are no longer losing points, we're no longer gaining points, because, yep, again, they managed to neutralize the command position that we had here. And they just keep us at bay with a Chimera, which I gotta say I was really not expecting. The Chimera apparently does not take to liking ATGMs fired by the HG8 here. You can see it's gonna take a big hit, and it's going down. Should have brought in those helicopters a long time ago. Now this time we were thinking, okay, what is Blue 4 doing? Because they just weren't doing anything. They were not pushing across, we didn't see any reinforcements come in. So we were just pretty casually engaging units over here, trying to kill off forces to thin them out and then push across. Unfortunately we never managed to get there. Now the Rafale over on the left flank managed to kill off the Ka-52. And my 24Vs are bravely trying to take it down, but it managed to escape. And that pretty much signaled the end of this helicopter push. You can see that Blue 4 has recaptured this position and is instantly deploying a screen of Lux over here to make sure that never happens again. Of course, this Tiger, as well as the Flakpanzer Gepard A2, is going to provide plenty of anti-air coverage here. making sure that we're never going to go right over this zone and just try to capture it with a couple of helicopters. Paramedic again pushing across, doing what he can here, but again getting stopped by a couple of Milans, although I really doubt that that's going to stop him. 432 is probably going to get shot at pretty soon by the RPG-7. That is, if they're not going to attack something else, because certainly they'll start losing forces pretty quick. There, now he's engaging the transports. But I really doubt that they're going to survive this, actually. Again, a Buratino firing by Spec 96, trying to clear out this position. And it was pretty effective. There was not that much units over on this side of the forest, or sorry, on over this side of the river. But we still managed not to push across. I had a lot of points in reserve. I just did not know how to turn this game around anymore. Again, we have a command unit in this zone. This is D-Dog's command, T-72M1K. Very, very aggressive move here. Just putting a command tank in the forest instead of where they're expecting it, which is back there, or possibly somewhere in here being a command infantry. So very, very well played there by D-Dog. Just putting in a command tank here managed to make it pretty much completely impossible for Blue 4 to easily neutralize this position. But they are putting down artillery fire, so I'm thinking they may know where it is. They probably saw it go in some time ago. And yep, they know exactly where it is. Or sorry, Spec 96 is putting down attack mark to signal to my team how ballsy this move was, because I just hadn't seen it yet. Now over on the left, not a lot going on. Para just kept trying to push across here. We saw another Leopard 2A5 here, but there was not that much that we could do to take it out. And at the same time, it just wasn't that big of a threat. Not now, anyway. MiG-27 from Spect going in, missing the target. And BMD-3 is trying to engage. Air response by an F4F KWS, taking down the MiG. MiG-25 BM getting hit by it as well. You can see, as the Leopard's been damaged, is pulling back into the forest to get repaired. But again, having that command tank, or having a 2A5 there, wasn't that big of a threat, because what we really had to do was try to push across and try to neutralize this zone, wherever the command vehicle might have been. Now the rest of the battle, I gotta say, was pretty uneventful. I just kept spamming mortar fire like a complete noob, and it did get me quite a few points, but of course it did absolutely nothing to ensure our victory of any kind. Over here on the right, they are bringing in a spare command vehicle. That's the amount of points they have at this stage. You can just bring in a spare command vehicle to make sure that if we push across here, if we manage to neutralize this command vehicle, they still have another one. That's how determined these guys were to win. And I wouldn't be surprised if their decks were completely set up to ensure their complete CV dominance, as it were. They just keep patrolling here with fighters in the meanwhile. You can see, or maybe you have seen, a couple of those fighters fly by. The Block 15s, or sorry, the Block F-16's Block 52. They're flying in, and here it is. This is Paramedic's Su-27. I'm not exactly sure what he tried to hit. Probably one of these tanks. And this is their air response. 2 Rafales, 1 Eurofighter, and 1 F4F. And this is what's going to happen, of course. 4 very, very high-end fighters managed to take down both of our aircraft very quickly without taking a scratch. And as they fired their missiles, they're pulling back immediately. I gotta say, that was one well-orchestrated Blue 4 response. I would not be surprised if they had those things on a hotkey to call them out very quickly. And at the same time, I think these guys were organized. So they were on TeamSpeak together or some other voice comms, coordinating what was coming in, what they needed, because the level of, let's say, synergy that they had achieved here is just something that you would not see from a random team. These guys were coordinating, and they were doing a very, very good job at it. In the meanwhile, I'm trying to do a little bit of, let's say, stinging here and there. I'm trying to spot the vehicles. My helicopters managed to get into position just when the 2A5 was pulling back into the forest deeper, so that I would lose line of sight. Flying my Mi-1 across, and yep, there's a target, although it's not very expensive, it's just a 40 pointer. And yeah, I keep saying it's expensive or it's not expensive, because I'm not very Conquest minded. I play a lot better in Destruction, because I know what units to go for, what units to ignore. And in Conquest, you have to change your level of thinking, which, for me, definitely I need a lot of practice in that, considering how well these guys did. Now we're pretty much approaching the end of the battle. You can see that we do pretty much nothing here, and neither do they. What Blue 4 did here, which was really clever, and at the same time pretty risky, was not devote any kind of forces here in the beginning, just a skeleton crew. Over here, they had 2, maybe 3 players, and 1 over on the right. And that's all. And it worked fantastically well for them. Now, Paramedic surrendered because he had to go off to dinner. He didn't actually surrender because he didn't feel like playing anymore. Although I wouldn't be surprised that was part of it, because we were all pretty damn annoyed at this stage that we just could not pull off a victory. Aside from that, they just kept moving forces into this block very quickly. And I think that initial push that allowed them to get the upper hand here was very effective. Aside from that, of course, doing all the wise defenses here, getting a screen of Luxes here, although it was just 1 to begin with, getting recon helicopter here, air defenses over on this flank in case they do try to push in. Over on the right they have everything captured or controlled. They have an LAV-25 that they've just stranded out here in the nowhere land. In the middle of nowhere. It's completely out of fuel, but it will tell them if we try to push across with helicopters. They got a longbow backing them up. They got a Cobra. They have chaparrals over here. And the way that they just kept deploying infantry and Kylers is what I think got us in so much trouble. There was just not that much that we could do against that. So I'm going to just wrap it up, because for me this game was really much about how did they do it. Firing across the water here, reinforcing this position as much as they could, and with just 50 seconds left on the clock, there's just nothing much going on. A little bit of napalm as the entire block catches fire here, but that's it. Now I wasn't feeding as badly as I thought I would be. 2200 units killed, 2500 points lost, which was really not as bad as I had expected. Käsekuchen, very good win ratio. Conqueror lost a bit more. Grimmy, very good kill-death ratio. And Zarek, slightly feeding. But again, they managed to win the game with it. So I'd say that it was pretty successful all the way. Anyway, pretty intense game. Not really too sure what went wrong there for us. But seeing the replay now, I'd say that we were just not aggressive enough. And that they had a very, very coordinated team that had, I believe, 80% of their time played in Conquest. So these guys were extremely well aware of what they were doing, well versed in the map. They had decks that were perfectly suited versus our decks that were not exactly perfectly suited to this map. So, lessons learned, push in aggressively, make sure that you get the position first, because getting the position first and then holding it is of course way easier than trying to push into a position like that. Aside from that, they had very, very good air dominance, and with my Chinese mechanized deck as I was operating in the middle, the best AA unit that I could field was AA infantry that had a range of, I believe, 2100 against aircraft. So that also didn't exactly help my team in getting the victory. Anyway, hope you found this game entertaining, hope you found it useful to learn from. And I really want to thank these guys over in the enemy team to, let's say, show me exactly what they did, how they did it, and what I can adjust from it in my own decks and my own strategies. Hope you found that too, and if you did, please give the video a like. And other than that, I'll be seeing you next time.